Do you know what shatters a soul more than being yelled at? Being met with silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from peace, but the kind that speaks of absence, of no longer trying, no longer explaining, no longer needing to be understood. It's a silence that doesn't echo in the air but in the heart. One that says, I've given all I had, and now there's nothing left to say. This silence isn't cold. It's weary. It's the final chapter written by someone who loved too deeply for too long, someone who begged to be heard until their voice went hoarse. It's the quiet that follows years of pleading into empty rooms, of explaining your pain to someone who only ever listened with defenses, not ears. And in that moment when the words die on your lips and you choose to walk away instead, that's when they finally feel it. Not your voice, not your tears, but the emptiness you leave behind. Because silence burns. It doesn't fight. It doesn't blame. It doesn't even try to win. It just is. And in its stillness, it speaks everything you once screamed but were never met with understanding. It becomes the weight of every boundary they crossed, every apology you never got, every moment you stayed when you should have walked. People think silence is surrender, but it's not. It's the final act of reclaiming your worth. It's the invisible scream of your soul saying, no more. And what's terrifying to those who took you for granted is this. Silence cannot be argued with. It cannot be spun. It cannot be manipulated. It forces them to sit alone with the consequences. They'll wonder why you're no longer answering. They'll question where your fire went. They'll feel your absence press against them like a truth they don't want to face. And that's the power of silence. It reflects their shadow back to them. All the things they dumped on you, all the ways they made you carry their mess, all the guilt they refused to feel, now it returns. Not through confrontation, but through stillness. You became the mirror, and now that mirror stands empty. There comes a time when even love has to draw a line, not out of hate, but out of self-respect. That's when you stop showing up to fix what someone else keeps breaking. That's when you stop shrinking to fit into places where your soul can't breathe. And that's when silence is no longer a reaction. It's a decision, a boundary, a shield. They won't understand it at first. They'll call you cold. They'll call you heartless. They will accuse you of abandoning them. But deep down, they'll know. You didn't walk away because you stopped caring. You walked away because they made it impossible to stay. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. Some people only start listening when the room goes quiet, when there's no one left to blame, when no one's arguing back, when the chaos fades and all that remains is their own voice echoing in the void. That's when the truth hits. Because your silence? It's not revenge. It's not a game. It's the final proof that you outgrew their chaos, that you no longer need to be understood to feel whole, that you've chosen peace over pleasing, self-worth over suffering. Not every pain needs to be expressed to be felt, and not every goodbye needs to be said out loud. Some of the deepest goodbyes are spoken with closed lips and open eyes. The moment you stop showing up, stop chasing, stop explaining, and you let the echo of your absence teach the lesson your presence never could. So if you're in that quiet place now, if you've chosen silence where there once was fire, don't doubt yourself. Don't second-guess the power of walking away with grace. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper that says, I deserve more. And in that whisper you rise. There's a silence that doesn't just fall between people. It lands like a weight, like truth, like a mirror. It's the kind of silence that confronts the other person with themselves. No distractions, no noise, no more explanations to soften the blow. Just the raw reflection of what they never wanted to see. And as painful as it might be, sometimes it's the best thing that could ever happen, because no one changes while they're being held up by your hope. So if you've chosen to go quiet, not out of spite, but out of self-respect, then you need to know this. Your silence is something to be proud of. It's not bitterness, it's not weakness, it's power. It's the sacred courage to release what no longer nourishes your soul. It's the moment you realize that not everyone is worthy of your voice, your presence, your energy. Some people only understand value when they've lost access to it. And your silence? That's where it all begins. It's not punishment. It's healing. It's choosing peace over war, choosing truth over fantasy, choosing yourself, finally. And yes, it might leave a void in someone who once took you for granted. Let it. That emptiness is theirs to sit with. Yours is the light that no longer flickers for someone who never brought warmth. Silence isn't passive. It's a boundary. It's clarity. It's a loud refusal to keep dancing in circles for someone who never learned how to stand still and listen. And that stillness, the quiet strength of your absence, it disturbs people more than any confrontation ever could. They'll try to provoke you, push your buttons, lure you back into their drama. But nothing unsettles a manipulator like someone who has nothing more to say, because silence leaves them with only one voice left to hear, their own. And for someone who has never been held accountable, that voice becomes unbearable. No one to blame, no one to argue with, just the echo of their own actions bouncing back with no filter. That's when they start to remember everything you gave, everything you held, everything you forgave. They may never say it, but they'll feel it. And for you, at first it may feel unnatural. You've spent so long explaining, justifying, trying to keep the peace. Silence might feel like abandonment, but it's not. It's alignment. It's you recognizing that you were never supposed to keep proving your worth. You were supposed to know it. So when you go quiet, and do it with intention. Not as a weapon, but as a shield. Not to hurt, but to protect. Because the moment you respond out of pain, you hand your power back. But the moment you stay still, steady in your peace, they lose the script they've always used to control the story. There will be moments where the silence feels unbearable, like you've lost something precious. But you haven't. You've made space for something far more sacred, you. And if they walk away forever, let them. Anyone who could only stay when you were bleeding for them was never truly beside you. Real love doesn't silence you. It doesn't force you to beg, to bend, to vanish. It doesn't make you feel like walking away is your only choice. So if you're choosing space now, distance, silence, don't apologize. You're doing the one thing they never expected, standing tall in your self-worth. And yes, they might try again. They might come back, softer or quieter, more careful. But remember why you went quiet to begin with. Remember how many times you had to raise your voice just to be heard. Remember how tired you were of carrying the weight of their unhealed wounds, because silence reveals the truth they never wanted to see. And the longer you stay quiet, the louder that truth becomes. You'll start to see yourself again, not the version of you that begged to be chosen, the one that stands firm, the one who no longer betrays herself to keep someone else comfortable, the one who remembers her worth without needing anyone else to confirm it. And slowly, the pain begins to shift. Not because they changed, but because you did. Because now, you no longer need to be heard to feel whole. You no longer need to explain your exit to someone who refused to listen to your pain. Sometimes silence is the answer. The most honest, powerful, and dignified answer you can give. It's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of the part where you finally stop bleeding for people who never brought you peace. And when they look for you in the same old places and find only silence, that's when your healing begins to speak for itself. I want you to hold your silence like a promise, not as a weapon to wound, but as a vow to protect the fragile parts of you that were once constantly torn open, even if it stings, even if they throw words like cold or selfish at you, even if the world expects you to keep explaining yourself. Deep down, you know the truth. You're not being cruel, you're being careful. With your heart, your peace, your healing. Because silence, when born from self-respect, becomes sacred. It's the way you say, enough. Enough of being overlooked, enough of being stretched thin to hold someone else's chaos, enough of handing out understanding to people who never once tried to understand you. That kind of silence is not emptiness. It's full of everything you once tried to say, full of boundaries that were ignored, full of tears that dried up long ago. And as painful as it is, it teaches the deepest lesson someone can ever learn. Those who don't care for you will lose you. That's the consequence, not revenge. And that truth will echo in their memory long after your voice is gone. While they sit with the begging in the space you left behind, I want you to make yourself a quiet vow. Never use your silence to punish. Use it to protect. Use it to become whole again. Let it close the wounds that kept opening. Let it rebuild your self-love and peace, without noise, without interference. Because only then can you return to life from a place that's clean, free of bitterness, free of attachment, free of need. And when you're sitting in that stillness, know that your silence isn't weakness. It's not a pause. It's a beginning, a quiet revolution of the soul. You're not just walking away. You're building something new, something unshakable. You're learning how not to return to what once broke you, how not to answer when chaos knocks again. You're learning to let go without looking back. It hurts, I know. Silence is not an easy path. But the truth is, It's the most powerful step you'll take toward peace. And when you hold that silence with dignity, when you stop chasing, stop pleading, stop asking for scraps, you become untouchable. That's the kind of calm that dismantles manipulation. The kind that disturbs those who once fed on your reactions. Because the one who once had power over your emotions is now facing a version of you that doesn't budge, that doesn't chase, that doesn't flinch. They'll try to provoke you, whisper guilt into your silence, poke at your calm just to get a reaction. But when your stillness is rooted in clarity, no scream is loud enough to shake you. That's strength. The kind of strength they never thought you'd find. Because serenity isn't surrender. It's the highest form of knowing. Knowing you gave your best. Knowing you were honest. Knowing you showed up with a heart wide open. And knowing that staying would have meant abandoning yourself. You didn't leave because you stopped loving. You left because you finally loved yourself enough to stop bleeding for someone who wouldn't stop the knife. There's a strange ache that comes with the silence that follows goodbye. You'll feel it at night in the stillness of your room. You'll hear it in the absence of messages, in the emptiness of not trying anymore. But within that ache, something else begins to grow. Wholeness, a return to self, a rebuilding. Because without the noise, without the constant repair, you finally have space to heal. And when you stop speaking just to be heard, when you let silence speak for you, your peace becomes unbreakable. You stop needing validation. You stop needing closure. You stop needing anyone to understand what you already know inside. You did what you had to do. Your silence becomes your sanctuary. Not a punishment, not a prison, freedom, a clean, sacred place where you no longer hand your power to those who mishandled it. And in that place, you grow. You reconnect. You remember who you are. But don't be surprised when memories visit you in that quiet. They will. The brain will try to trick you, whispering only the good moments, the laughter, the tenderness. But those memories are fragments. Don't let them fool you into crossing a line you worked so hard to draw. Don't forget the pain, the neglect, the nights you waited for change that never came. Don't chase closure, and they won't give it to you, not the real kind, not the kind your soul needs. Because real closure comes when you decide it's over. When you accept that no explanation, no apology, no conversation will ever make what they did okay. It comes when you stop hoping for the version of them you created in your head to finally appear. So when you feel tempted to break the silence, to reach back, to explain just one more time, don't. Breathe instead. Remember that your silence is the border between who you were when you were hurting and who you are becoming now. Protect that border. Honor it. You're not being cold. You're choosing warmth from within. You're not being distant. You're returning to yourself. And that return will be the most powerful thing you ever do. The real closure doesn't come in a final message. It doesn't come in a dramatic goodbye or an apology that arrives too late. It comes in the moment you finally choose yourself. When you stop waiting for someone else to make it right. When you decide that peace is more important than chaos. That your dignity matters more than being understood. That's where the story truly ends. And where the real healing quietly begins. Carl Jung once said that what we don't resolve within, we repeat outside. If you don't face your fear of being alone, you'll keep running back to what broke you, hoping this time it will love you better. But silence, true silence, is the doorway out of that cycle. It's where the pattern breaks. Not because someone finally changed, but because you did. This silence isn't just space between two people. It's space for you to come home to yourself, to meet your wounds without flinching, to forgive yourself for staying too long, for loving too hard, for holding on when your hands were bleeding. It's where you begin the chapter you were always meant to write, the one where you stop settling for half love, where your presence is not a gift to be wasted. In that quiet, something strange happens. They start to feel you more in your absence than they ever did in your presence. The one who thought they could always come back finds the door closed, not slammed, not locked in rage, but gently, silently closed. And that silence, it echoes louder than any fight ever could. It isn't meant to hurt them, but it might. Because for the first time, they are left alone with themselves. No comfort, no distraction, just the memory of who you were and what they lost. And if they learned something from that loss, good. But if they don't, that's not your burden. You already gave your all. You tried. You stayed longer than you should have. Now, it's time to stay with you. Sit in the silence. Listen to what rises. Feel the ache if it comes. But don't run from it. Talk to yourself. Hold your own heart. And when the memories creep in, when nostalgia tries to fool you with soft images of moments that don't tell the whole story, remind yourself why you chose this path. Remember the silence that came from them first. their lack of care, their refusal to hear you, their inability to see your worth. Because anyone who truly loved you would have never made you feel like silence was your only way to survive. And from this place, from this sacred stillness, something new is forming. You can't see it yet, but you're not breaking. You're becoming stronger, clearer, freer. You're shedding the version of yourself that had to beg to be seen. And what's rising in its place is someone who will never again hand their voice to someone who doesn't know how to listen. Let that be your transformation. Let your silence grow roots, not walls. Let it become the foundation you build a new life upon. And as the noise fades, as the drama dissolves, you'll begin to notice a shift. The chaos no longer tempts you. The begging voice inside quiets. You start to feel grounded again. Not because someone gave you peace, but because you chose it. And yes, those who never valued you will notice the silence in ways they never noticed your words. They'll think back to your kindness, your patience, and your small acts of love, and the ones they rolled their eyes at or dismissed, and it will sting, because they'll know it's gone, and this time for good. But the silence is not about their pain. It's about your freedom. It's about understanding that sometimes the only way someone sees your worth is in the space you leave behind. And even then, it's not your responsibility to fill their emptiness. You're not here to save those who didn't want to grow with you. You're not here to explain to someone what they chose to ignore. You're here to evolve. At first, the silence will feel heavy, like a cloud full of everything unsaid, but slowly it begins to clear. It brightens. It heals. You'll begin to hear something far more important than their opinion, your own voice, the one that was buried under years of trying, pleasing, fixing. And in that voice, you'll rediscover your power. You'll remember who you were before you gave so much away. You'll see your own worth reflected not in someone else's eyes, but in your own. And that's when you'll know you were never too much. You were just giving too much to the wrong person. And as you sit in the silence, you'll feel yourself begin to rise, not with noise, not with rage, with stillness, with clarity, with a quiet strength that can't be shaken. Because you no longer need to be heard to know you matter. You no longer need to be loved by someone else to feel lovable. You no longer need closure to feel complete. The silence gave you all of that. And now, you begin again. Because while you were there, while your presence was constant, your voice steady, your heart wide open, they couldn't see it. They couldn't feel the weight of what you were carrying, the quiet way you kept everything together. But the moment you stopped, the moment your voice fell into silence, something changed. Their mind had no choice but to listen in your absence. Their heart, once so numb to your presence, began to stir. And sometimes, as cruel as it sounds, that's how it has to be. Because not all lessons come through words. Some arrive through silence, undeniable, unmoving, irreversible silence. You didn't go quiet to punish. You went quiet to survive, to heal, to finally choose yourself. And now, even if they knock again, even if they say they're ready, even if they promise change, you're not the same. Because silence reshaped you. It cut through the illusions, it burned away the excuses, it made you face the truth. You're no longer the one who begs. You're no longer the one who bends. You're not the version of you who once tolerated the intolerable. You are someone who honors your soul now, who stands with clarity and not confusion. Someone who chooses peace over noise, boundaries over desperation, self-worth over attachment. And that kind of transformation doesn't undo itself. It's a door that once closed doesn't open again without real, undeniable change, the kind that very few are ready for. Yes, there may still be moments where the past whispers, where nostalgia knocks, where old emotions try to take hold. That's human. But don't mistake longing for a reason to return, because the you who exists now would never again betray yourself for comfort or silence your voice to keep someone else comfortable. You've learned, finally, that your peace is non-negotiable. Jung once said that we only truly meet ourselves when we can sit in silence, without masks, without distractions, without the echoes of other people's expectations. That is where your truth lives. That's where you discover what you really need, what you genuinely deserve, and most importantly, what you will never tolerate again. The moment you learn how to hold that silence like a sacred space, everything begins to change. You stop attracting chaos. You stop confusing attention with affection. You start vibrating differently, deeper, clearer, more rooted. People who once found comfort in your confusion will start to fade. You won't fit into the same pain anymore. You've outgrown it, and that is power. Your silence becomes a filter. It reveals who's ready and who's not. It protects your heart from those who only knew how to take. And when others accuse you of being cold or distant or unforgiving, remember, they're speaking from their discomfort, not from truth. Because silence rooted in self-respect doesn't punish. It protects. It teaches. It heals. Someone who truly loves you would have never made you scream just to feel heard, would have never waited for your silence to realize your worth. So if you found your voice in quiet, if you've discovered peace in absence, honor that. Let that be your new foundation. Because in silence, you're no longer trying to be understood. You're simply being. You're no longer chasing approval. You're standing in truth. You're no longer unraveling to prove your love. You're whole. And in that stillness, healing takes root. A real, lasting healing. The kind that brings you back to yourself. You don't have to explain why you left anymore. You don't have to replay the story as to justify your distance. The only person who needs to understand the depth of what you went through is you. And you do. You lived it. You bled through it. And now you're rising from it. The journey isn't over. The silence you're holding, this quiet power, it's not just a phase. It's the start of a new way of living. One where you no longer settle. One where you don't break yourself to keep others whole. One where you move from self-love, not from fear. And yes, they might come back. They might try to rewrite the past, make excuses, promise change. But you know better now. You know that change isn't words, it's action. And unless they show up with something real, with something transformed, you owe it to yourself to stay where your peace lives. Because if you open the door without change, you already know how it ends. You've lived that ending too many times. Silence, in the end, isn't what's left after love fails. It's what rises when love for yourself finally takes its rightful place. It's not hollow, it's sacred. It's not lonely, it's honest. It's not weak, it's powerful. You've earned this stillness. You've earned the right to not explain, to not apologize, to not return. And in that silence, your future begins. Louder, brighter, truer than anything you left behind. This is not the end of the story. This is the first time you're writing it for you. It breaks the cycle the moment you stop filling the space with explanations, justifications, and noise. It forces you to face what you've buried for far too long. Your fears, your wounds, the aching need for love from someone who never knew how to give it. And when you finally see those pieces clearly, when there's nowhere left to hide, you realize you can't go back to pretending. That honesty, no matter how painful, is the first breath of freedom. And yes, that freedom is lonely at first. Not the kind of loneliness that makes you desperate, but the kind that heals you. Because now you're not surrounded by people who misunderstand you. You're not shrinking to fit into spaces that never welcomed your truth. You're not watering down your love just to keep someone from walking away. For the first time, you're standing in silence. Not as a victim, but as someone reclaiming their power. In that stillness, something begins to rise. A new version of you, more grounded, more aware, more whole. The person you were always meant to become, if only the noise had quieted sooner. One day you'll look back and be thankful for every tear, every moment of doubt, every long night you spent learning how to hold your own heart. Because without that silence, you would have stayed. You would have waited for someone to choose you when you should have been choosing yourself all along. The ghosts will return. They always do. A scent, a song, a memory, and something will bring it all rushing back. And for a moment it will hurt again. The ache of what could have been, the longing for what never was. But now you carry something you didn't have before, armor made from your own dignity. Every time you feel the pull to go back, to explain just one more time, to open the door for someone who closed it on you, you'll remember. You'll remember the silence they gave you when you cried, the emptiness they left you in, the exhaustion of trying to be enough. They say silence destroys, but maybe silence is what saves you. It tears down the illusions, the fake peace, the fake smiles, the fake apologies, and leaves only what's real. And the truth will sting, but it's better to hurt from clarity than to live in comfort built on lies. Your silence today doesn't mean you gave up. It means you chose you. It says without needing to shout, I won't sacrifice my voice for love again. I won't hand over my worth to someone who doesn't know how to hold it. And even if the world misunderstands, even if they label you cold and selfish or too much, let them. They didn't live your story. They didn't feel what you felt. They don't get to define your healing. Never forget, Someone who truly loves you would never ask you to stay silent just to keep the peace. They would never let you bleed quietly just to protect their comfort. If your silence became the only way to survive, that's the truth the other person will have to live with, and you will move forward, lighter, freer, no longer carrying the weight of trying to be enough for someone who never saw you fully. Let this silence be the new language you speak, not to hide but to protect. Let it be the boundary that says, my peace is mine now. And if you ever speak again, let it be to someone who leans in, who listens deeply, who hears not just your words but your heart. Someone who doesn't flinch at your scars, but sees beauty in them. You weren't made to chase love. You were made to share it with someone who's capable of receiving it. The silence, the one they tried to ignore, will live on inside them like an echo, a mark that never fades, a reminder that someone once loved them so deeply, so honestly, and they let it slip through their hands. And that ache, that will be theirs to carry. You, on the other hand, will rise. You'll walk forward with more wisdom, more softness, more power, because now you know what love is and what it isn't. You've learned that self-love sometimes sounds like a goodbye. Sometimes it feels like absence. But it's always presence. Presence with yourself, your truth, your worth. And when you love again, and you will, it will come from clarity, not fear, from wholeness, not need, from a place so rooted in truth that nothing and no one can shake it, because no one will ever silence you again. No one will ever make you feel small in the name of love again. And that's the quiet triumph that no one sees, but it changes everything. This isn't an end wrapped in anger or noise. This is the beginning of something far deeper. The calm after the storm, the stillness that holds your rebirth. Because silence isn't emptiness, it's presence. Presence of self-respect, of inner peace, of the courage it takes to walk away from what once felt impossible to leave. This is your new beginning. The moment of the noise stops and you finally hear your own voice again. And that, more than anything, is worth everything.